Hey crafty friends, welcome back to Susie on the Farm. In today's video, I am going to be doing some thrift store makeovers using the new spring IOD release. So hopefully you guys can get lots of inspiration. I won't be using all the products, but I have many different projects for y'all today. To begin with, I'm going to be using this clay pot. I racked up on these. I got these for like 25 cents a piece, so I got all they had left for like 20. There was like 20 of them. So I'm going to begin by using the wild berries mold. I love the strawberries that are coming back, and this one is so cute with all the little wild berries. I'm using IOD air dry clay, and I dusted it with cornstarch first. And this is a little tedious process, but I did get it made. I had to speed it up so you guys didn't watch all of that. I just pushed the air dry clay into the mold, and then it released very easily by rolling it out. I did lose a couple little strawberries there, but that is no problem. I can reattach them. So while the clay is wet, I am going to use Tight Bond Quick and Thick glue, and I'm going to go ahead and put it onto my clay pot, adding in the pieces that I lost there with some glue. And then while the clay is still wet, I am going to go ahead and paint it. That just slows down the drying process just a little bit, enough to cut down on the cracking. I did forget to hit record, but I used iron clay, which is one of the newer fusion colors, and I got it painted with one coat. Now we're going to let that dry, and we're going to move on to projects 2, 3, and 4. I have these wooden bowls. I have this little mini clay pot. These are a couple of Dollar Tree things here, and I had this Mother's Day mason jar. So I picked out a few of the paint inlays from the Spring Melody paint inlay book, and this thing is jammed pack. I barely made a dent in one page getting all of these out, and because these are also small things. But I am going to go ahead and paint these two with vintage linen or white linen. I think it's vintage linen. I'm going to do 2 coats, and then on the 3rd coat, I'm going to add in the paint inlay. For this little clay pot, I'm not going to even try to do full coverage. I wanted to see some of the clay. So here with the paint inlay on the 3rd paint, you can do the 2nd or 3rd. I needed good coverage to cover all that, so I did it on the 3rd. And I'm putting the paint side down into my wet paint. I'm using my finger to make sure that it makes good contact, and then I'm re-wetting it with my mister bottle, and I will use a paper towel here to dab off any of the excess. I'm going to let that dry, and I'm going to move on to my little clay pot. I've cut down my inlay to where it will fit, and I'm doing the same process, putting a light coat of wet paint, misting my inlay, and then laying it into the wet paint, pressing it down with my fingers, re-wetting it, and then dabbing off all the excess. I'm going to let those dry, and I remembered that I have these amazing ceramic eggs in I call it my junk drawer. It's just a drawer that I pile things in that I don't know what I'm going to do with, and it's full of all kinds of things. What I loved about these was that they looked like they were just picked out from under a chicken, minus any poop, thank goodness. But they had all the little markings and stuff where they'd been rolling around in my drawer. So I did not want to paint them. So for this project, I'm going to use liquid patina to put my inlays on. It's the same process as using paint, except for I'm using liquid patina, which is crystal clear. So I did the same thing. I put a coat, I misted my inlay, I put them on my eggs. I did cut these down to as small as I could because it was a rounded surface. While those are drying, I'm going back to my others, and they are dry and ready to be complete. So to take them off, you just re-wet your inlay. Let it sit for just a minute, and then you pull it off, and that paint stays in your project. It embeds into the paint of your project, and they both turned out with a beautiful impression. Now back to my eggs, same process. They're dry. I'm going to wet it and I'm going to remove it. Now, with using the liquid patina, it is a sealer. Therefore, it seals that paint into that carrier sheet. So these cannot be used a second time. If you're using a clay base or a chalk base paint, you can reuse them up to 3 times. But if you're using liquid patina, you will not be able to reuse. But this book is so jam-packed, there's no way I'll ever even get time to use everything in this book before, much less using them a second. Now on this last one, I did have a little bit of smearing and it didn't transfer as good. I don't know what I did wrong, but that's okay. I just wiped that one off. I've got 3 to go with here. I am going to seal everything up with another coat of liquid patina, even though these are pretty much already sealed because I used a sealer to put them on. Now to the mason jar with the floral on top, I do need to add some floral onto that top part. I'm going into the Katharina transfer book. This is also one of the new releases. I picked a couple of roses that match the color of the paint inlay that I added on to this mason jar. I'm going to fussy cut around that first rose and add it, and then I will go in and add the other one to fill in. I wanted it to be really full in this jar. And you can layer your transfers, cut them apart, use them however you want. And if you've never used an IOD transfer before, they come with this little rubbing tool, and you just rub and lift until your image is transferred onto your project. I did have a little bit hanging over here, but I just rolled it down to be on the side of it. And then I used the other rows to fill in the top part so you couldn't see really any negative space on that. To finish this off, I did seal everything with a coat of liquid patina, and I tied a scrap piece of fabric around it. I also took my ink pad because I really wanted the edges to be a little bit more defined to show that this is a jar. So I used my ink pad to go around the edges to put some more definition into that. And I love how all of these with this paint inlay turned out. I cannot wait to use more of it. There is 8 solid sheets of all this spring goodness. And I did sell out of this one first, but I am restocked. I got a few more on my website. I'm restocked of everything right now as I'm doing this voiceover, if you didn't get yours in the first go round. For my next projects, I have a couple of shiny ceramics that I've had a really long time that have not sold. So I think I'm going to zhuzh them up a little bit using the Katharina transfer. This is just a white ceramic tray, and putting a transfer on ceramic is very easy. So you just rub and lift and your transfer will release onto that shiny project really easy. So I'm just using the tool that it comes with. All those little stems and leaves on the side, you do have to rub a little bit extra, but I got it all transferred, and then I'm going to use that backing to just really make sure that all the edges are stuck down really well. And because this is a tray and things might be sitting on it, I am going to seal it up with liquid patina. It'll dry just as shiny as the rest. Now the other one that I have here is this precious little teapot. I love the color on it. And I'm going to take another floral transfer that has some of those same colors, and I'm going to transfer it onto this teapot. Now, when you're doing a very rounded surface like this, it can be a little more difficult to put a transfer on. I like to hold it down in the middle, do the middle first, and then go around and do parts on the outside as I go. That way, it doesn't stick down everywhere. You don't get a lot of wrinkles. It is a long and tedious process. That's why I have this sped up so fast. But you can do it, and it's not hard. It just takes some patience. So I chose not to seal this one because it's not a tray. Nothing's going to be sitting on it. It can be wiped off easily. And these both look so beautiful. I love this transfer book, especially the birds. So beautiful. let's move back to those two wooden bowls from the beginning. I did finally decide what color I wanted to paint them and what inlay I was going to use on them. So I decided to paint them in weathered wood. It goes on like this really dark color, but when it dries just like weathered wood. Looks so good. So I got those painted with 2 coats, and while they're drying, I am coming back to my clay pot. It has been overnight. The clay is completely dry, and as you can see, there was just a little bit of cracking there in the center. So I need to do a second coat of paint to make sure I cover everything really good. And I did the rest of the pot, and look at all that texture goodness. I love it. Okay, we're moving on. I'm doing this in the order that I'm doing things, so I know we're jumping around from project to project, but I had one of these piano rolls left over from my Whatnot sale last week. I decided to keep it and transform it. I'm using both of the gilded transfers from this release. I picked out one of the larger frames from the smaller, sorry, I cannot remember the name of it, and the other one, I got all the corner edged pieces from the Bell transfer. It's full of all these amazing embellishments. So I'm just transferring this right onto my piano roll. I have never upcycled a piano roll before, and I think I'm hooked because this turned absolutely adorable. So I laid it out like I wanted, transferred those pieces. I felt like the frame needed a little something, so I grabbed a butterfly from the Wild Bloom. That's not really what it's named, but that's what I'm calling it. Transferred it in the center, and y'all, like I said, this turned out to be my favorite. I gotta find some more piano rolls. You can just hang these up like I did this one here. I hung it on a hook, but I'm probably eventually going to cut that part off, use a vintage pant hanger to hang it with, so I can use the rest of this paper for some more upcycles. Everything is now completely dry on our clay pot. I'm going to finish it off just by simply dry brushing over all the details and over all of that texture. I'm using a chip brush, the tiniest bit of paint. I've wiped off most of it, and I'm just going over the top to make sure that that paint highlights all those details in the mold. And then I'm just going all around the pot to highlight all of that texture. I never dip my paint back in the brush. There's plenty on there to hit those high spots. And that's it. This one is done. I used all fusion paint on this, so nothing needs to be sealed. And this is gorgeous. And I have so many of these left. I don't know how many I should do of these. They're not selling as they are, so I'm going to have to upcycle them. But I love how this one turned out. What do you guys think? Back to our wood bowls, I'm going to do a paint inlay again. I'm going to use liquid patina on this one because sometime with darker paint, when I put the inlay into the paint itself, I have a really distinct line where the carrier sheet ended, and I don't seem to have that as bad with liquid patina. Maybe that is just me, but I'm using liquid patina. I'm going to seal all this up with liquid patina, so it's going to have the same sheen all the way around. I just won't be able to use these 2 paint inlays again. I picked a couple out. One of them has a little chick on it, and I put it in the wet liquid patina, wet it, put it aside to let it dry, and once they are dry, I'm going to re-wet it, dab off all the excess, and pull it off. And this vintage pink color shows up so beautiful onto this weathered wood. They both turned out so beautiful. To finish them off, I am just going to seal them up with some liquid patina, and that is that. These turned out amazing. They look good with a half sphere in it or a bird nest, and I also discovered they look absolutely precious stacked on top of each other, and they stack perfectly. I have one more project for y'all today. I picked up this very long cutting board a while back for $4.99. It's kind of rough. It's been beat up a little bit. Some of the paint is chipped off, so I decided to actually go with that look. So I took my paintbrush, I went ahead and roughed up all the edges, went back down to the natural wood. I'm going to use weathered wood, and I'm going to do just a couple of messy coats. I'm not doing full coverage, not even going all the way out to the edge. I just want to make it look like this has been painted for 100 years and never painted again. So I did do 2 coats, but then I am going to let it dry and heavily distress it. Distress it, I'm going to use sandpaper and a wet wipe to just really distress this down really good. And I'm going to use one of the new stamp sets on this. The Brambles and Berries, I think, is so precious. Been dying to use it. It's got all the berries in it again, so it goes with our whole strawberry. When you first get a new stamp set, you do need to season it, so I went over it all with some 220 grit sandpaper. Then I'm just going to play around with a few of the elements here and decide how I want them. Once I get my stamps positioned like I want them, I'm going to pick them up with a thin mount, and I am using the white permanent ink for this. I don't need this to be, I want it to show up, but I don't need it to be extremely vibrant. I want this to be more of a background type image. Even though this is going to be the final image. But to put these stamps on, I hold my hand in place in the middle, or I always hold one hand still, and then I use my fingers to rub all the other areas. And I will do the same thing with the top parts. See, it's just a perfect light transfer on this really distressed piece. If you put like a really crisp transfer on here, I think that it would be a little bit too much because this is so distressed. And then I stuck another little limb in the middle of the frame there, and I am going to seal everything up with some clear wax. And I love how this turned out too. It's just a great statement piece. Not necessarily a focal point, but just a really great statement piece. I hope that y'all have enjoyed all of today's projects and got lots of IOD inspiration. Don't forget, if you're needing any products to do your own transformations, they're on susieonthefarm.com. And if you would like to purchase some of my transformations, they will be on my Whatnot sale next Thursday night. So be sure you go follow me on there. I'll leave a link below in the comments for a $15 credit if you're new to Whatnot. Tomorrow night, I'm also having a show, but it's going to be books and ephemera. If you're interested in that, I would love to hang out with y'all. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next Wednesday.